Right, because rock and roll hadn't actually happened when we started. It was just about to happen, and we were about to make it happen very big, about to sort of turn it into a major industry, whereas it had been Elvis and Chuck Berry obviously making it. They'd made it pretty major by then.
Well, up until you guys did it, there had been no English rock and roll. I mean, Tommy Steele and something.
There had been bits and pieces, yeah.
But why all of a sudden? Why did this floodgate come? And we got overwhelmed in the States with rock and roll bands.
Well, because we opened the gate. I think if we hadn't opened the gate, I think what was to come after it wouldn't necessarily have hit. But I put it down myself. People dispute this, but hell, I was there, so they can dispute it as much as they like, you know. I say that the cheekiest thing the Beatles ever did was say to our manager, we don't want to go to America till we're number one. We made that stipulation. I'll tell you why. Because we have an artist over here called Cliff Richard, who's one of the big British stars. Tommy Steele, as you mentioned. Adam Faith. Cliff's a nice guy and everything. But he'd been to America, and he'd been like about third or fourth on the bill to Frankie Avalon, Fabian, and who knows, topped the bill. But it was that kind of a bill, rock and roll package tour. The British guy coming. And we'd seen him come back, and we'd seen his interviews. We were just a little younger than Cliff. He's a year or two older, which made all the difference in your teenage years. It's a big gap. He'd come back, and we'd read his interviews, and he'd say, I had a great time over there, you know, terrific, and I played a lot of gigs. And we'd kind of ask, we'd say to ourselves, but he's not a hit. He's a major star. He's like Elvis over here. He's not making it over there. Then Adam Faith went over, Tommy Steele went over. And we'd see them all come back kind of saying, I had a great time. It was wonderful, wonderful. But we'd wait. Well, where's the big number one hit then? You know, if they had a wonderful time, surely the Americans are going to be buying their records. But it never proved to be true. They were just a little European act who'd got a bit too out of their depth, gone and done a tour, not meant an awful lot, come back, and then they were stars again when they came back here. So because of this, we'd seen this just for too long, about 2 years too much we'd seen this happening. So we said, well, we're not going to be another in that line. We said, we just don't want to go over. Don't book us third or fourth on a bill. We said, don't even think of booking us till we got a number one. And we actually, the sheer arrogance of a little bum group, not even from London. You know, we're a complete sticks group. But we had enough savvy to just say, don't bother. Because we were huge in Liverpool. And we were huge in England, and we didn't want to come down a step. We wanted to be huge wherever we went. You know, we didn't want to come. We didn't want to go to the small hotels now. We were on an up. We were on a roll, and so we had the sense to say a couple of us, all of us actually had quite good sort of street sense. We weren't the stupidest of groups. John was art college. Me and George were grammar school.
What did everybody bring to the table? What was the chemistry?
Within the group. Yeah. I mean, it's an impossible question to really answer, but I'll have a stab at it for you. John brought a biting wit, which was lacking in everything everybody else did. If you talk to Cliff this afternoon, you won't find a lot of biting wit. He's a nice guy, but you won't find a true wit. You won't find any Lenny Bruce there. But in John, there was a lot of Lenny Bruce. There was that kind of serious wit. We didn't want to be the same as anyone, so there was a desire to be different, which I think we all contributed on that one. John, certainly, a lot on that. I think I brought a commerciality. I think I have an ability to be commercial. I kind of feel like I know what people like a lot of the time. You can't be commercial all the time. But I had looked at show business from afar and sort of thought that record's going to be a hit, and it would be. I could sort of pick them and spot them. I sort of knew what people would want. So I think I sort of helped there a lot. When John and I started writing, I'd be keen that we always got a very good title and things like that. I brought harmony to the group. Nobody was really very into harmony, but my dad, with this Jim Max Jazzman, he'd always sat me and my brother down and said, this is harmony, you know, da-da-da, da-da-da. And he'd shown us that, and we'd had a little bit of... So when we came to do the group, I'd say to him, let's do a harmony on that one, and we gradually worked our way into things like that. George was serious, quiet, always a very good businessman. George was always very good on the business side, and always very good on his instrument. I don't think he was very innovative till later. But he was a good, solid musician there with a good, solid sense. He was very sensible, George, still is. sensible guy, which was very helpful. So he kind of added that to the package. So he sort of had wit and sort of integrity, wit with John, commerciality with me, sort of seriousness and an ability with George. And Ringo was the best drummer in Liverpool. That's what Ringo was. And Ringo had wit, again, native wit. He's still a very funny man, Ringo. Ringo didn't know when he was being funny, which was always great, because those of us who'd sort of been to grammar school knew how the phrases slung together. Three of us went to grammar school. Ringo didn't. Ringo always said he only went to school for 3 days. He because he had a bad operation when he was a kid. He had peritonitis. His stomach's got a lot of scars on it. And his parents were told he'd die, age 3. Oh. So with Ringo, everything was always a bonus. And he literally didn't go into school, spend all his youth in hospital with peritonitis, recovering from this stuff. So thanks. So Ringo's a very good University of Life guy. He always had masses of that. But he'd say to us, we'd say, good God, that was exhausting. That was an exhausting day yesterday. He said, oh, God, he said, it really has been a hard day's night. We go, what? What did you just say then? He said, say that again. It's been a hard day's night. And he thought he meant it. In fact, quite a few titles came. Tomorrow Never Knows was another of his. He said, well, tomorrow never knows. I said, I'm sure that's not the real saying, but it's better. Let's write that one down. So that would be... Ringo said titles. He talked in titles all the time. We go, ding, because we were maybe a little more literate than Ringo was, although he's caught up a lot now.
People say about you, too, that you had a sense of discipline, showmanship, public relations.
Yeah, they say that about me. I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's true. I had a steadier upbringing than certainly John and Ringo. Certainly John. The others all had nice upbringings, actually. John was a little unfortunate. It was a nice upbringing. He was a little unfortunate because his mum died when he was young and his father left home when he was 3 and stuff. So John had a kind of... He lived with his aunt. So I think that was a lot of the reasons for John's mixed-up periods. Is when your father leaves home at 3, you're not on a good thing. It's going to give a little boy a problem. Fantastic. We all love Brian. A lovely man. Lovely man. He was a failed actor. And I actually always credit him with one of the things. Another thing behind this Beatles' irresistible force was that being bright guys, if we'd have just come down straight like a normal group, we would have just hung out with some musicians in London and gone out to the local restaurant with them or something. But because of Brian, we came in at a much higher level. Because Brian was RADA. Brian was ex-RADA, the acting school in London, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. Brian had been there, and Brian loved theatre a lot. So Brian's crowd would be Coral Brown, Vincent Price's wife, and you'd be meeting great actresses, or you'd be meeting Larry Gelbart, MASH. We met Larry very early on. Oscar Buselink. We were meeting these guys who were like big kind of showbiz guys, and we'd be chatting with them at parties and enjoying their conversation, enjoying their wit. As I say, with John, who was a very funny guy anyway. John was a clever man. He wasn't clever academically because he never got a single exam in his whole life, John. I got some exams. John he couldn't get arrested as far as exams were concerned. But he was all here. He'd read a lot, and he was a very intelligent guy, John.
What was the impact when it happened? This had to be a start. Were you aware of how big it was?
No, actually, the great thing about it was a gradient. It was a gentle gradient for us.
Snuck up on you?
Everybody else thought it was an overnight success. Yeah. We started off in Liverpool as nothing, just as a crummy little band. When we got this opportunity to go to Hamburg, then we started to be better than the other bands in Hamburg. We started to get a larger repertoire. Started to look a little further. They started to come and visit us. The clubs in Hamburg, the very first club we ever played at was called the Indra, which is the German name for India. Indra. And we played there. The first night we played, I think there must have been 2 people in there. We started to learn our showbiz skills, because what happened, around the door, there'd come people. It was off the street, this was the Reeperbahn, this is a tourist area. They'd come off, and the price of the beer would be there. The first thing they'd look at was the price of a beer, to see whether they could have a quiet, cheap drink. And they'd hear this band, and we'd see them, we'd go... And we'd start doing show, we'd start changing the number, change quick, whatever, a better number, if we were playing something crummy. And we'd try and entice them in. This was our role in life, was to make people buy more beer. That's how we actually started off, was the more beer they bought, the more likelihood of our pay going up. So it's a fantastic training, because you actually had to get results, or else you were going to be out next week. So we did what the Germans call make show. And we put show in there, and we put a lot more repertoire. Well, by the time, after a couple of months had gone by, roughly, I think, when we finished playing in that club, we moved to another club. That club was packed out nearly every night of the week. See, so we knew we had something going. We'd managed to make an empty club packed. And Saturday night, you just could not move for like young girls and guys. And it was the crowd too. It was the people. It wasn't like to just rock and roll fanatics or something. It was the German people who were coming. They were ferrying in, and we knew we were a big success. Moved to this next club. Our crowd moved with us. This next club became the most popular club. So by the time we left that scene and came back to Liverpool, we then had to work up again. But we knew we'd been massively famous in this one little neck of the woods. We knew we'd made it. We'd seen how it's all done. We'd had all the acclaim. We'd even got a little record contract out there. Came back here. We hadn't led too much, but from where we'd started, it was a huge jump. Came back to Liverpool, started again with this repertoire to become the Cavern. When we first worked there, not many people came in. By the end of when we worked there, you couldn't get in there, and it was sweat and everything, so electrifying. I mean, the amps used to fuse with the sweat dripping off the ceilings. Used to just do in the amps. And then when that happened, you see, we then used to go a cappella, and we'd joke about the commercials. Ladies and gentlemen, a great new product has come on the market, and we'd do all this stuff. We'd handle any situation. It was a fabulous training ground. It was like the older entertainers had said vaudeville was. We had our own little version of vaudeville, potted vaudeville kind of thing. So by the time we came to play the sort of big shows and the big gigs around, and by the time we went to America, we'd already been famous about 5 times in all these other little levels. So to actually, and because we'd said to Brian, we want to be number one, when we stepped off that plane in America, no matter what any journalist said to us, hey, you guys are lousy, we said, but we're number one in your country. Beat that if you can, my man. And there was no, you couldn't say anything to that. That's the one thing you cannot dispute, right? You've got a record number one now, I've got to admire you. It doesn't matter what I think of you. If your record's number one, I've got to have some respect for you. And this is what happened. We were in Paris, and the telegram came through from Capitol Records. It said, "One Hold Your Hand's gone number one." Woo, we just jumped on each other's backs, screamed the whole place down. And we knew we were off for the fame. Whilst it was kind of, wow, and amazing, in a funny way, we expected it. Not an arrogant way.
Did you feel pressure to sustain it once it was there?
Not too bad, no. I mean, we figured we'd done it 5 times there. This is the 6th. We'd do a 7th and 8th and a 9th. No problem. It was it had become part of the way we got used to it. We got used to this sort of fame. You see, it would be the Plaza where the kids were outside, and there'd be more kids, and it'd be bigger, and it'd be Ed Sullivan. But in England, we'd just done it, and it'd be the Nottingham Plaza. And the kids were just as packed outside there. So it was funny. We got used to it, and we'd learned our trade by the time we got to the States.